Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know that your support for me these weeks has been one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. But now, it is time for the people of this city to hear what we have to say! The time has come. No, I am not going to do my terrible Riddler impression the whole time. Oh, I know you wanted me to, but no. Alright. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the barn. As you can see, we've got a bit of a change of scenery, and that's because the lights in the basement aren't working anymore, so I'm up here in the loft, where I will probably be for the rest of the foreseeable future. Alright, but today we've got just a great movie lined up. I'm so excited to talk about it. I've been spending a bit of time on this one, and that's because it's a great movie and I wanted to do it some semblance of justice, and that movie is The Batman. Oh boy, The Batman. Now, a couple of general things before we get into it. So, The Batman, it's really good. I've seen it like 3 times now, and it just holds up even better every single time. One thing I will say is on your first viewing, it's very easy, at least for me, what happened is I was just like, what? I didn't quite know what to think, you know? I went to go and get a Batman calzone from Little Caesars with my buddies, and we just sat there waiting for our calzone, and I was just thinking, I don't know what to think about this movie. It was just, there was so much of it. It's kind of like an unassailable monolith when you first watch it, you know? You kind of have to watch it a couple times, and at least for me, I kind of had to get a little bit of guidance from the director himself. I listened to a pretty extensive interview with Matt Reeves about sort of just all things the Batman, and I think I would have gotten it without him, but like it really was a big help. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's a bit of a multiple watcher kind of movie, and you might even need some third-party stuff, you know, to really get all the good stuff that's in this movie. Also, the movie, I'll just say up top, is just unbelievably grunge. That is if I were to choose one word to describe this movie, it would be grunge. Like, everything, you know, the dirty, rainy streets, the greasy black hair, and the eye makeup from Robert Pattinson's Batman, and the Nirvana music at the beginning, and just everything about this movie just bespeaks grunginess, which I think is the element that really sets it apart tonally and you know, design-wise from the other Batman films. You know, you had your gothic, and then you had your neon, and then you had your, like, very realistic with the Nolan trilogy. But with this, it's just dirty and dank and dark, and I love it. Alright, so let's get into the main stuff to talk about, and I'm going to be following a bit more of a structure this time. First, we're going to talk about what I liked about the filmmaking aspects. Then we're going to be talking about characters, plot, just some plot highlights that I enjoyed, maybe a couple problems, who knows. I'm tend to not be very negative about things. And then, themes. Alright, so, starting off with the filmmaking aspects, and I think my personal favorite thing about the filmmaking was the cinematography by the great Greg Fraser. You know him and love him. He's worked on Rogue One and The Mandalorian, and most recently he won an Academy Award for Dune, which was incredible. And I knew, like, something about this movie is I knew all of the people behind it going in. Not just the actors, but like all of the people who were, you know, the director and everything. And I was like, if big names make a movie, this movie's going to be amazing. And I was so scared that it wouldn't be amazing, but then, lo and behold, it was amazing. The cinematography was incredible. There was just this, even on an enormous screen, there was this claustrophobic feel to all of it. You know, there was just always something in the foreground, or, you know, some blurriness or something smudging the frame, you know, that it's like the water flowing through a window, or just like things obstructing your vision from the main action. All of that was just really sold the dark tone of this movie, and the lighting of the movie was just perfect with the orange, really high contrast shadows, and just how much of it was at night. It's just incredible that Fraser was able to get such a unique and really great looking visual grammar for this movie, when so much of it is dark and you know, just sort of one note, you know. It's messy in just the coolest way possible. The shadows are just such a big part of this, and the darkness and everything. It's great. Alright, next we're talking about the score. Michael G Kino. Now, Michael G Kino, I'm a big fan. I really am. I love his work on Up and The Incredibles and Ratatouille and, you know, Pixar and all that stuff. But I've been sort of not terribly impressed with his work recently. And this was a big step up, I think. He's been doing a lot of franchise stuff, and this has been his like first really good original score for a while. And yeah, a lot of people are saying, you know, the Batman theme sounds a lot like the Imperial March, which I would argue, well, yeah, it reminds you of the Imperial March, but at least for me, the theme took on a whole life of its own by the time it was done. I was humming it every time I walk out of the theater. It's so easy to remember, and I think, honestly, it works really well, and I disassociated it from the Imperial March. So the Riddler's theme, being the Ave Maria in the minor key, I'm usually against stuff like that. Hans Zimmer does this a lot, where he'll take a musical idea from elsewhere, or a melody, or something that's associated with the character other than his score theme, and just incorporate that into the theme. Like, a good example is in No Time to Die. He uses the main melody from No Time to Die by, you know, the Billie Eilish song, and he uses that as a theme for the relationship between Bond and Madeline. But I think that it all kind of worked out in the end. In fact, I didn't really even notice that it was the Ave Maria until the end, and honestly, it works because as a, you know, a unifying factor. It's just sort of a peeve of mine. I think it's effective as a thematic device, especially since, you know, the Ave Maria is like the first thing you hear in the movie. I think it's a great through line for the villain. Alright, so one of the things that I was really impressed with in the movie that I really wasn't expecting to be impressed with was the design of everything. When Bruce first motorcycles his way into the Batcave, I thought to myself immediately, this is my favorite Batcave. I'm not entirely sure what it was about it. I mean, it's got all the Batman elements, you know. It's got the bats flying around, and it's it's got the stone and everything. But I think that something about it being in like a subway system just, I think, really appealed to the like my sensibilities. You know, it was sort of very castle-like and symmetrical, and it just had a cool, like, sort of gothic feel to it, which definitely Nolan's didn't. And, so I really appreciated that they really went hard on the aesthetics of the Batcave. I think it's the best Batmobile so far. It sort of borrows a little bit, which is really funny, from the 60s Batman Batmobile. You know, just in just sort of the way it's structured, but it's just this beast and a monster of a car, you know. Its introduction, again, going back to the shadows, how just that boiler on the front just goes out of the shadows, and there's this really long, like, unreal pause as they all, like, look at it. It's just great dramatic stuff, and it just roars like a beast. And it looks awesome. Like I said, the design for the city was just grunge levels of dirty and creepy, and it just sold it, I think, just really subtly. I don't know. I just really appreciate it. I'm not entirely sure if it was like original or anything. I mean, Joker did this as well, where it sort of had the trash-ridden Gotham City. But something about, that the design of it, coupled with the cinematography, made for a really, really unique and ultimately and more importantly compelling image of Gotham City. Lastly, the suit. I think it's my favorite suit. The weight to it, and it just looks really visceral the way it is. It's not sleek and armor like Nolan's. It's not, 89 is charming, but it's got its drawbacks. It's some problems. The gauntlets, that was something I really loved. Every movement of Batman while he's in the suit is really weighty and serious and a little bit slow, and like all those shots of his boot falling just like a giant on the rain-soaked pavement. All of that really, really gave an aura to Batman, gave it sort of a feeling of just like almost like fear, definitely trepidation in his presence, which really serves the overall narrative through line, which again we'll get to in a minute. Alright, let's talk about characters and actors and things. So, first off, the man himself, Bruce Wayne. We will talk about him more in themes because one of the big reasons why this movie is so good is that it's 100% about Batman. It's centered on Batman. Robert Pattinson is perfect, and you know what? When I first heard of it, I was like everyone else, I was like, really? But then as soon as I saw him in the trailers, I was like, this is going to be amazing. I love it when they cast someone sort of out of left field, and you just know they're going to be great. Was not disappointed. He's got the chin for it, man. Like, and he keeps his mouth shut. That's something that's just a little tidbit that I always notice about the other Batman, especially Christian Bale, is his mouth tends to hang open. But my goodness, he's got the presence somehow, but he's still like really emo and like a loner, And you know, just like he does the sort of the moody, spoiled Bruce Wayne sort of persona really, really well. And I was very interested at how they sort of made both Bruce and Batman recluse, which, again, I'm going to be alluding to this throughout the entire video. The fact that he's a recluse is really important to his journey as Batman. You know, it shows that he has somewhere to go. Like, he's a little too caught up in everything. You know, he's a little bit too much of a recluse. Alfred, Andy Serkis, I wish there had been more of him, you know? He's so awesome, and he plays such a great, like, Alfred, who has this extra dynamic of being, like, really ex-military. I mean, Michael Caine's was ex-military, but it becomes really evident, you know, with his scars and his cane, and the fact that he says, I could teach you how to fight. He taught Batman how to fight. I just wish that there had been more, but he really did serve his purpose, and I really like how he's sort of the guy who's sort of chipping away at Bruce, trying to get him to connect, you know? He's trying to bring out his humanity throughout the film, which is a really great role for Alfred to have. The Riddler, the perfect foil for this kind of Batman, which is the Detective Batman. Great choice. Paul Dano is just the perfect doughy-faced, super psycho man. And, you know, as soon as I saw it was Paul Dano, again, I was just like, this is going to be great. The one thing that I had sort of an issue with was that in a post-Heath Ledger world, most Batman psycho villains have some kind of Heath Ledger's Joker to them, and in some moments, I sort of felt that the Riddler was kind of derivative of Joker. I 100% think that Paul Dano was doing totally his thing, and there are a lot of instances that show that he was, you know. But I think one thing is in the videos that he sends out, they're very, very evocative of the Joker's videos in The Dark Knight. But one place where he really stands out is in the killing scenes, which again are evocative of Zodiac and Seven, you know, David Fincher stuff. But he really took on a life of his own in the murder scenes, and especially one of my favorite scenes in the movie where he talks to Batman in Arkham. That reveal, again, spoilers, that reveal that he thinks that they were working together the whole time, to me, that just turned the whole character on its head and made him so interesting and special. And I thought, this is incredible. I loved his way that he freaked out and just started weeping, especially in that last scene with the Joker, where he's just crying his head off, and he's just absolutely mortified when he realizes that Batman not only wasn't working with him, but actually doesn't want anything to do with him, you know? And also, it's interesting how there's that aura of unknown around him. His character is sort of in the background until the very end. Even though the Riddler's not in it, I think him pulling the strings the whole time really, and also being such an incredible inverse of Batman, being such an incredible foil for him, really cemented him as a great villain, especially for a character-driven Batman story. So, Gordon, again, I think if it weren't for Gary Oldman, Jeffrey Wright, hands down, is the best Commissioner Gordon. I love how he's the guy who, practically speaking, keeps Batman from going off the rails. I thought of this, they're like a Batman and Robin, really. I mean, it's that kind of duo, because they work together so well. Gordon is there to sort of be his, his envoy to the police, obviously, but also, keep him from going over the top, and sort of keeping Batman grounded in reality. A lot of the characters around Batman in the story are there to keep him grounded in reality, so that he doesn't become, all encompassed by his mission. Also, they're just dynamic. They had great chemistry somehow. Jeffrey Wright and the stone-faced Robert Pattinson Batman. They just, like, the scene where Catwoman calls for them with the signal, and Batman just rolls up in the Batmobile, and he's like, "What? You called me? No, I called you." I don't know. It felt really great. It felt great. And speaking of Catwoman, I didn't quite know what to make of Catwoman when I first watched it. But I mean, at this point, every character is a great character, and I think what makes her special is, how similar she is to Batman. And, with a similar purpose. But what really makes her important, again, she is there in service of, Bruce Wayne's story, just like everyone else. What makes her so important is her personal vendetta of vengeance. This whole movie's about vengeance as a little, teaser for the themes that we're going to be discussing. And Batman's vengeance is more of like up in the air. But her vengeance is very, very specific. And it's that dynamic where Batman sort of needs to wrestle with the real-life ramifications of vengeance in the person of Catwoman. Also, she's sort of an allure to him. Not in a bad way, I would say, like Catwoman has been in the past. Just, he actually begins to care about her, and but I love that line at the end where she says, "You're already taken, aren't you?" Because that's really how it is, Batman, he's devoted to Gotham City, He can't pursue even the better things like a relationship in that regard. All right, moving on from characters. Lots to say about characters, but we're moving on to some plot highlights. Since it's a mystery crime movie, there's a lot of great twists and plot stuffs that are just great. The opening scene is the best Batman intro ever. I cannot stress that enough. The way the shadows, and he's in the shadows, but he is the shadows, and he comes out, and he just lays into those dudes, and and the lowest note on the piano in G Kino's score, and just every single thing about it is, "I'm vengeance." Cannot stress it enough. Amazing intro. Incredible. I loved the tension in the scene with Coulson and the bomb around his neck. It's this really climactic struggle between the good Batman and the bad Riddler. But then in the middle, you have this guy who's compromised himself, who's gone over to the bad even though he's working for the good. And in that middle ground, he gets torn apart, figuratively and literally. Because you cannot be in the middle in Gotham. You have to be either for the good or the bad. Thematically, that's what I loved about it, but also, it was just so full of tension. I loved the riddles, and how it wasn't just a mystery that the Riddler uses riddles for, but also to, bring the truth out. That's just how he works. He uses riddles to bring stuff out. And also, just some great acting from Peter Sarsgaard, who really sells just the absolute just panic in this guy, and it's great. The car chase was incredible. It was kind of weird to see that upside down shot, which absolutely iconic, but honestly, sort of a trailer shot, really. It didn't quite work in context, especially after seeing the trailer, but still really hits home. The Oz fake out right after the car chase, I appreciated in that the ambiguity of the Rada Alada clue that the Riddler gives. How it could be Batman, it could be the Penguin, and it could be even Falcone, right? And I like it because it's an interesting use of the characters from the comic books, sort of noticing that 3 of the characters in Batman, if not more, have flying creatures as their sort of their main name, and the ambiguity there, I liked that as the riddle. The riddle was a bit of a stretch, but the ambiguity of it was just enough to, you know, create some real genuine mystery. Also, the little penguin wobble that he does is awesome. I love how they're, even in this movie, which is so grunge and so dark and so serious, there are little nods of humor, like when Catwoman asks Batman, "What, do you live in a cave?" And you're like, "Well, actually, yes, he does." Yes, they're just great moments. One of my absolute, I think it might be my favorite scene, I think it is, the scene between Bruce and Falcone. Because in that scene, and the following scene, which we'll get to when we're discussing themes, just everything turns on its head. I love the plot twist that the rat that they've been searching for this whole time is actually the boss of the whole operation. I'm sure most people could see that coming, but I didn't. I really didn't. And it's great that they found the balance of a well-known enough character of Falcone, but also he was in the background enough to where the twist that he's behind it all, I think, really works. You know, and also the narrative that Falcone gives as to how his father asked him to, you know, take care of the guy writing about the Wayne family secrets, and also how Mr. Wayne Thomas Wayne got murdered, makes a great duality between the subsequent scene where Alfred gives his side of the story, and there's a bit of ambiguity to the story of the past. So one of the reasons why I love that scene with Falcone so much is it really hits home on the themes of from vengeance to hope. And I think in a more broad terms, the theme of vengeance to hope also sort of balloons out to focusing on the future instead of dwelling on the past. Vengeance is intrinsic to responding to the past, whereas hope is preparation for the future. Now, the whole thing starts in that excellent, incredible opening scene where you get your first taste of what is wrong with Batman in this movie. This is what's so great about this movie, is Batman has fundamental flaws in the beginning that he realizes in the middle, and he works it out by the end. It is a Batman story where he is the character who has to grow, and every character and every plot element and everything, even though it's action-packed and it's full of twists and it's full of great characters, everything is for Batman. And that is why this Batman movie is, if not the best, one of the best. And I'm not afraid to say it. It is definitely one of the best. So in the very first scene, he says, what does he say? He says, "I'm vengeance. And that was such a cool, trailer shot, and it's a really, really super cool introduction to Batman in this movie, but it's a fundamentally flawed idea. Batman can't just be vengeance. And our first clue to that is that after he's done beating the snot out of the gang members, the guy that he just saved curls up in fear and says, "Please don't hurt me." And, Batman just sort of looks at him, but you can see already that there's something wrong with just being vengeance, where the people he's saving are afraid of him too. And so the whole thing starts to develop, again, soon after, when Batman starts to sort of break away from his personal vendetta of just general vengeance on the crime of Gotham for the sake of his parents. And he does that by human connection. And the first one is with the little boy, and I love that moment where he realizes how he, in a way, is that little boy, how he was there, he saw his father murdered, and there's that moment where he sort of dwells on it, and I love the moment where Alfred sees his eye cam where he looks at that boy, and Alfred knows that Bruce is really hurting, and he's feeling for this kid, and that goes into Alfred's dynamic. But then he starts to care about Alfred, which again, one of my absolute favorite scenes in the movie, where Alfred's been almost blown up by a bomb, and there's that moment where Bruce realizes that he's the only one that Alfred has. When the nurse says, is there any family that he has? And Bruce says, no, there's not. And he realizes that, oh my goodness, I've had this person in my life that I've just kind of ignored, especially for the last 2 years with this, Gotham project. And then there's just a beautiful moment, even in the scene where he's confused about his father, and Alfred has to clear it up for him. Still, there's that connection, and human touch has a really special role in this movie, where every time Batman touches someone just with his hand or whatever it is, then there's a real connection there, and a really meaningful connection, as Bruce is breaking out of his shell of emo kid into actually caring about other people and not just being a vengeful weapon. And then, obviously, the last one is Catwoman, who, who he takes personal interest in her plight, and obviously, there's a bit of a romantic dynamic there, and it's those three people that he starts to care about, that he starts to gradually come out of his shell. What's really cool is that the Riddler, while leading him, to this reveal that they were working together the whole time, also is leading Batman to the revelation that vengeance is not right. Number one, Riddler's main goal is vengeance. There's a whole lot of vengeance going on in this movie, and that alone is enough to sort of rattle Batman enough, especially in that scene where the Riddler thinks they're working together, and he thinks that the Riddler knows he's Bruce Wayne. It rattles him enough to where he realizes that there's something wrong with his vengeful vendetta, but also the way that the Riddler reveals the sins of his father. And again, this is why I love that scene with Falcone, is that the rug gets, I always want to say the rug gets swept out from under. No. The floor gets pulled out from under. I don't know how it works. You know what I mean. It just gets pulled out from Bruce, and all that he thought he was fighting for isn't there anymore. And he has to seek meaning from something different. He realizes that vengeance can't be enough, because the past isn't certain, and the past is flawed, and his father was flawed, and he can't just fight for his father anymore because he doesn't know whether his father was the good man that he thought he was. But also, he realizes, and this comes in the final stage of Batman's change from vengeance to hope. In the end, where the Riddler has blown everything up, and the seawall comes in, and Batman is at the end of his rope trying to get all of these Riddler followers under wraps. Great fight scene. It was really incredible. But he is exhausted and he can't go on. But Catwoman is in danger, so he injects himself with this serum, and he goes like a beast on this guy. Honestly, this guy should be dead. He just punches him like 10 times, full on, and then again there's Gordon there to stop him. Gordon always keeping him in check. But it's then that Batman realizes, because as they take the mask off of the guy says, "I'm vengeance." And in that moment, Batman, Bruce Wayne, realizes that if he keeps going on his path of vengeance, he will end up doing what his father did. What he did was he went too far, and he went to a place that he shouldn't. He crossed the line. There's that line from Falcone, which I love, where he says, "You'd be surprised what a good man will do if fear isn't enough." And Thomas Wayne learned it the hard way, but he repented, and he had remorse, and he paid for his crimes, most likely with his life. And Bruce finally understands that once he reaches the end of his rope, and he realizes that he can't make the same sins as his father, or he will end up the villain. Also, something incredible about this movie is how it puts Batman on trial. You know, Batman is such a cultural icon, but, like, is he a good cultural icon? What is good about Batman? Like, is he a good hero? Is he a good... How is he different from the villain, you know? That's what they're exploring, you know? And at the beginning, he isn't much different. That's what's so incredible about this movie. He is, in a way, a villain. He has to see what a hero is about. It's not just about not crossing the line, because you're not assured that you never will. You know? It's not about that. It's about fighting for the right reasons. It's about fighting honorably for an honorable purpose. And that's what separates him from the Riddler. The Riddler only seeks vengeance, even in his vendetta to, cleanse and purify Gotham. But Batman realizes that to be a real hero, he has to stand up for, good purposes and good things. And hope is that purpose. Hope, and a symbol of faith in Gotham and for a better future, is what makes Batman such a dynamic hero. he realizes finally that he can't be vengeance anymore. And he immediately goes from vengeance to sacrifice. And he jumps onto that cable, he cuts it, and plunges into the water. And, you know, you can't help but sort of get some baptism vibes of where he plunges into the water and he rises up. Someone new. Someone who's not a beacon of vengeance anymore, but someone who is a symbol of hope. And it's made very clear as he lights that flare and he holds it up for everyone to see, and Batman becomes the center around which all people unite in Gotham for a hope of a better tomorrow, to restore their faith in Gotham, as the mayor says. And he is the symbol to guide Gotham forward into redemption. You know, it's not enough to be vengeance. He has to be a beacon of hope. And he says that the scars of the past can destroy us, but we have to allow them to transform us, rather, so we can fight for the future. You can't just dwell on the scars of your past, because that won't get you anywhere. In fact, it will end up, probably what will end up happening is your scars will destroy you as you dwell on them. But you have to use them, let them make you stronger, so that you can have hope, and you can have faith, and you can work towards a better future. And that's what Batman learns, and that's what we can learn from this film. And it's just so well conveyed, and it's just so well crafted, and so well done. I'm so happy that this movie is as good as it is. I enjoyed every minute of watching it, all the times that I did, and I would highly recommend you go and see it. Even if you're not a fan of Batman, this is definitely worth your while. Great stuff. Great stuff. Final note before I go. No, I did not get to everything that was good about this movie, and even if it didn't all make sense, just take my word for it, okay? It's good, okay? I know I can't speak well, okay? Just do it, just watch it, it's awesome, and you know...